Okay, imagine an ocean where the top predator, this reptile, longer than a school bus, just never left. We're talking Mosasaurus. 66 million years ago,
No.
but what if it was still here?
It's a wild thought, isn't it? And that's exactly what we're diving into today. Basically trying to figure out how it might have evolved if it skipped that whole extinction thing. What would our oceans look like now?
Right, and we're drawing inspiration from that YouTube video, What If the Mosasaurus Never Went Extinct? So this isn't just, dry science facts.
No, definitely not. We're exploring a really cool what if. It's a shortcut, really, to understanding some mind-bending possibilities.
Awesome. So let's start with the original deal. The Mosasaurus back in the late Cretaceous. What was this thing really like? Lay it on us.
Okay, so the original Mosasaurus, massive. We're talking 9 to 15 meters long. So yeah, longer than a T-Rex, and incredibly powerful.
15 meters. Wow. Okay. Powerful how? Like speed,
Yeah,
strength.
speed. Definitely. It had this huge tail fin, almost shark-like, and estimations are it could go from 0 to maybe 48 kilometers per hour, like almost instantly. An ambush predator's dream.
Whoa. Okay, that's fast. Like seriously fast for something that big. So it ambushes its prey. Then what? What about the business end, the jaws?
Ah, the jaws. Yeah, they were double-hinged, which meant it could open its mouth incredibly wide and lined with rows of these sharp, pointy teeth.
Built for grabbing, not chewing, right?
Exactly. They weren't for slicing or grinding, more like holding on to slippery prey. And get this, there was a third row of teeth, palatal teeth, on the roof of its mouth.
A third row. What for?
To stop things escaping. Imagine trying to swallow a large, struggling fish or ammonite. Those extra teeth would act like a ratchet, helping to pull the prey down its throat. Swallowed whole, usually.
Good grief. A real-life sea monster. So what was on the menu for this thing? Did it specialize?
Not really. It seems like it was pretty opportunistic. Fossil evidence shows they ate basically anything they could catch. Sharks, big fish, sea turtles, those early dolphin-like animals.
Anything, even Zor.
Even other mosasaurs, yeah. There's fossil evidence of bite marks mapping mosasaur teeth on mosasaur bones. So yeah, cannibalism was definitely on the table.
Okay, adding that to the terror list, how did it find all this food? Did it have super senses?
It had something really cool, a forked tongue, like a snake. It would flick it out underwater to basically smell the water.
Underwater?
Yeah, it's called chemoreception. It kicks up chemical trails, finding prey, maybe finding mates, although sometimes maybe mistaking a potential mate for prey, which is awkward.
Okay, I bet. So where did these giants hang out? Deep ocean, coasts?
Mostly shallow seas, actually.
Yeah.
The world had a lot more shallow inland seas back then. They were powerful swimmers, but probably didn't venture into the really deep ocean that much.
Interesting. And they weren't always huge sea monsters, were they? Where did they come from?
Right. That's maybe the wildest part. They evolved from land-dwelling lizards. Ancestors call it Agellosaurus, maybe only about 1.5 meters long, kind of like monitor lizards.
Seriously? Little lizards went back to the water and became that?
Over millions of years, yeah. During the Cretaceous period, they adapted, became more aquatic, legs turned into paddles, tails got powerful, leading to about 40 different mosasaur species. Mosasaurus hoffmanni was the biggest, the baddest of the bunch.
Evolution is just
Whoa.
from tiny lizard to apex sea predator. But obviously they're not here now. Their reign ended. What happened?
Well, the big one, the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event. The asteroid.
Grand dinosaur pillar.
Exactly. Hit the Yucatan Peninsula, caused absolute chaos, massive tsunamis, rocks raining down, and then the big killer for the climate, the impact winter.
Right, the dust cloud blocking the sun.
Yeah, for maybe a decade. Sunlight blocked, temperatures plummeted, plants died, and in the ocean, something critical happened. About 90% of phytoplankton just vanished.
Phytoplankton. The tiny algae at the bottom of the food web.
The very bottom. No phytoplankton, no food for the things that eat them, and so on, all the way up. The entire marine ecosystem basically collapsed.
So even if the Mosasaurus survived the initial impact, its food just disappeared.
Pretty much. All the large prey items it relied on gone. Later on, things like krill and shrimp diversified and became abundant, but they're just too small. You can't sustain a 15-meter predator on krill, not with that kind of metabolism.
So starvation, essentially, after ruling for maybe 25 million years? Okay.
Yeah, long story short, the food chain collapsed, and the Mosasaurus went with it.
What if it didn't? That's our big question. What if some managed to squeak through? The video we're looking at suggests two main evolutionary routes. Let's tackle the first one. The vicious Mosasaurus. How does that one survive?
Okay, for this lineage to make it, it needed some serious adaptations, probably quite quickly. Think about what survived the extinction sharks and turtles, things that can maybe travel further or dive deeper.
To become better swimmers.
Yeah, maybe developing a more tapered, streamlined body. The paddles might have become more fin-like, better for efficient long-distance swimming. Migration would be key, right? To find those pockets where food was available, maybe at different depths.
Okay, more mobile. What else?
Staying warm-blooded. There's evidence the originals were at least partially warm-blooded, and that would be crucial for surviving colder waters during migrations or potential deep dives.
Deep dives. Could the original do that?
Probably not super deep. The pressure would be immense. So maybe developing something like a swimbladder, like deep-sea sharks have, for buoyancy control, moving between depths without using too much energy.
A swim bladder.
Yeah.
Interesting. Anything else for the pressure?
Yeah, this is really speculative, but maybe something like externalized sinuses, like whales and dolphins have.
Yeah.
It helps protect the skull from pressure changes during deep dives. Without something like that, deep hunting would be problematic.
So a faster, deeper diving, maybe slightly more robust Mosasaurus pulls through. What happens next? We enter the Paleogene period, 66 to 23 million years ago. How does it evolve then?
Well, the Paleogene actually had periods of significant warmth, like the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, and warmer temperatures often mean larger reptiles, right?
Like crocodiles and turtles today.
Exactly. So this vicious Mosasaurus, with access to recovering food sources, early whales, larger sharks, maybe other marine reptiles could have gotten even bigger, maybe reaching 25 or even 30 meters long.
30 meters. Okay, that's absolutely enormous. A true Leviathan.
Yeah.
And still a generalist predator.
Probably. Eating whatever large prey it could find. And its ability to roam different ocean regions might have helped it cope with things like ocean acidification, which was also happening at times. It could just move somewhere else if conditions got bad.
Okay, giant roaming sea monster established. Now, jump forward again. Neogene and Quaternary periods, the last 23 million years or so. Ice ages start happening, and new competition arrives. Like Megalodon.
Yes, SNES. Megalodon, the biggest shark ever. Now that's competition. They both likely preyed on the newly evolving baleen whales. This could have been a major evolutionary driver for the Mosasaurus.
How so? Competition usually leads to specialization or conflict.
Or maybe cooperation. This is a really fascinating idea from the source material. What if, to compete with Megalodon for huge prey like whales, the Mosasaurus developed pack hunting behavior?
Pack hunting in reptiles. That sounds unusual.
It's definitely speculative, but think about it. Taking down a massive baleen whale, especially with Megalodon around, might be much easier for a small group, maybe 2 or 3 mosasaurs working together.
How would that even work? Coordinating attacks?
Maybe. Synchronized movements, herding prey, isolating weaker individuals. This kind of cooperation would likely require more complex communication and probably increased intelligence, maybe larger brains.
So smarter social mosasaurs. And you're saying they might have taken on Megalodon?
Well, competing for the same food source, definitely. The video even speculates that maybe this coordinated hunting by mosasauropods gave them an edge and could have potentially contributed to Megalodon's extinction around 2.6 million years ago. Though obviously other factors like changing ocean temperatures were probably involved too.
Wow. Mosasaurs potentially driving Megalodon to extinction. That is quite the what if. So fast forward to today, the last 11,000 years or so. What's the end result of this vicious path?
The end result is terrifying, frankly.
Yeah.
A mosasaurus potentially reaching up to 40 meters long, weighing maybe 200 tons, just an absolute menace of the deep.
40 meters, that's longer than a blue whale. What does that mean for us, for humans?
It means swimming at the beach is probably a very bad idea. Smaller fishing boats, extremely risky. You'd likely see the development of huge, almost tank-like fishing vessels just for basic safety.
Changes everything about our relationship with the ocean. Would it just be a mindless eating machine, though? Or would it have an ecological role?
Oh, it would definitely have a role. Like big sharks or orcas today, it would probably be crucial for ocean health. Calling the weak and sick among large marine animals, whales, big sharks, etc. Maybe even controlling populations of things like large groupers, which could indirectly help coral reefs by keeping algae ooters safe.
A terrifying but necessary part of the ecosystem then.
Mm-hmm.
How would people react if we try to hunt them?
Huge debate, you'd imagine. Culling versus coexistence. The video suggests maybe we'd end up agreeing to give them designated hunting grounds, using sonar tech to try and avoid them, but coexistence with a 40-meter predator.
That's tricky. Understatement of the century. Okay, that's one path. But the video offered another completely different fate. The gentle giant Mosasaurus. How does that happen?
It hinges entirely on that period right after the extinction. Remember, the lack of large prey.
Yeah, the food chain collapse.
So imagine some mosasaurs just weren't great at catching the smaller fish that were left. Maybe individuals that by chance had adaptations better suited for scooping up lots of small things had an advantage.
So instead of chasing bigger things, they focused on quantity over quality.
Kind of, yeah. Initially, maybe just smaller fish, swallowed whole. But over time, this could lead down a path towards filter feeding.
Filter feeding. Like a whale.
Yeah.
But it's a reptile with sharp teeth?
Exactly. It would require a massive evolutionary shift. The skull shape would need to change, becoming better for sucking in water. And those sharp teeth. They could gradually evolve. First, maybe into, dense rows of narrow, spiky things. Then eventually into a comb-like structure, a sieve.
Yeah.
Perfect for filtering out plankton and krill.
That's convergent evolution, right? Like how baleen whales evolved from toothed ancestors.
Precisely. A reptile independently evolving a similar feeding strategy to whales because the environmental pressures abundant small food favored it. It's incredible to think about.
Absolutely incredible. So how did these gentle giants handle the warm periods of the Paleogene? Did they also get huge?
They probably thrived. Those warmer periods, like the PTM, often had massive algae blooms. More algae means more zooplankton, more krill, basically a buffet for a giant filter feeder.
So while the vicious ones were hunting big game, the gentle ones were feasting on krill soup. Fascinating contrast. What about the ice ages later on? Colder water.
Colder water often holds more nutrients, which can mean even more krill in certain areas, especially polar regions. So the gentle giants might have grown even larger during the ice ages to capitalize on these massive krill swarms, probably undertaking long migrations like modern baleen whales.
And today, where would we find these enormous filter-feeding reptiles?
The video suggests maybe mostly in the coldest waters, perhaps down in the Antarctic, feasting on krill blooms far away from their vicious cousins.
Safe from predation then, but maybe not safe from us.
That's the tragic twist, isn't it? Being gentle doesn't guarantee safety. Their sheer size and maybe unique skin texture could make them a target. The scenario suggests maybe the fashion industry gets interested.
Oh no, hunted for their skin.
Potentially driving them towards extinction, yeah. A very different kind of human interaction compared to the vicious Mosasaurus, which would be feared and avoided, likely harder to hunt on an industrial scale.
So the terrifying one might inadvertently protect itself better from us than the gentle one. That's bleak.
It is. And if the gentle giants declined, ecologically, you might see other filter feeders, like actual whales, expanding to fill that niche in the Antarctic.
Right.
Knock-on effects everywhere.
Wow. Okay, so recapping. Two possible futures from one ancient creature. One becomes this colossal hyper-predator, maybe even developing pack intelligence, reshaping ecosystems through fear. The other becomes an equally huge but peaceful filter feeder, mirroring whale evolution but facing threats from human industry.
It really highlights how evolution works, doesn't it? Different pressures, different food sources, completely different outcomes from the same starting point. The idea of pack-hunting reptiles and that direct evolutionary parallel with whales are, for me, the big whoa moments here.
Totally agree. It just makes you think how finely balanced things are, how one extinction event going slightly differently could change everything, which leads to that final thought. If the vicious Mosasaurus did exist, this 40-meter terror, would the only way to balance things be to throw another ancient monster into the mix, like Titanoboa? What other insane ripple effects would we see?
Yeah, it opens up a whole new set of what-ifs. Definitely leaves you with a lot to chew on.